Well, let's look at the president's speech now. Now you're talking about so many issues that should be addressed, and in some of today's speech, he did talk about, well, cutting cost of governance. He also talked about prosecuting those people that will be, at the end of the day, found, to have soiled their hands in oil money, especially in some government agencies. So, and these are some of the demands we've seen from the protesters all through last week. Is that an indication that the government finally is raring to go towards that, El Dorado of a nation we all look towards before the elections?
I have said this before. I've written about this in blogs. I believe sincerely that Dr. Goodluck Jonathan means very well. I believe he's a kind person. He has very good intention for this nation. Now, you will prosecute those people. You will deal with them. That is also good. But like I said about 3 days ago, it is good, in fact, very, very good to fight corruption. But it is very, very better to ensure corruption is not able to take place the way it takes place in Nigeria. This is because when you have 1,000 instances of corruption, maybe 1, 2 will get prosecuted successfully. It is not because we're a bad nation, but that's the way the system is. So this is my own view. It is the things Mr. President said about going after those people, they are very lovely. I'm in full support of those. However, it is my considered opinion that if we retain the current processes that made it possible for the 100 special people to fleece the nation to the tune of 1.2 trillion naira, then we have only reversed whatever gains we have had. And we have provided a solid basis for future agitations, perhaps in 6 months or earlier than that.
Okay, but this change that we're talking about, in terms of structural change, yes, adjustment, as you say, aren't we in danger of just perhaps coming up with that mindset that it is the executive arm of government that started and should end it? Because, I mean, what about the judiciary, legislative arm of government, the state governors, the local government level? It's a whole structure. And that's why some people say you need a critical mass of perhaps people who are of the same mindset to really go in there and cause that change that we all want. As it is now, even if it brings up the best of rules and regulations coming from the top, how does it filter down and you make sure that everybody is on the same page with you?
Thank you. I agree absolutely with the submission that you have to take into consideration from the presidency down to even our councillors if you need to get anything done right. I will only add that the reason why people are focusing on Mr. President is because of his peculiar position. The President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is the most powerful president in the world. You may want to contest this. You may want to say that other presidents, like the President of the US, is the most powerful man. But we have very many reasons, which Nigerians will agree with me, that singles out the Nigerian president as the most powerful.
Like what?
There are a lot of things he can do.
Like what?
You are aware that presidents of this nation, in the past, attacked a whole community. They got away with it. Pius Adesanya recently did a profile, telling us about the different things these people have done. The PPRA came up, increased fuel price in a way, because when you did it, it's an action. It will move from 65 naira to 141 naira. They did it. And people have been paying, you've been paying that much up till perhaps yesterday. It will be very, very difficult for the president of the US to do that. Let's look at a time when Lamido Sanusi got an approval of Mr. President to bail out banks. There was no discussion in the legislature. There's nothing. Whereas Nigerians, we participated in the bailout discussions of the United States Congress.
But he says that the BOFIA, Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act, empowers him to do what he did. So
yes, I'm not contesting the foundation. I'm telling you how much power is resident in the executive. How much of good? He acted on behalf of Mr.
Ariyomo, how much of good can we use such power to achieve for the nation?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You see, if Mr. President is able to have access to arrays of options that are available, it's only Mr. President that could give the kind of process change that have advanced. The President of Nigeria can stamp out all these vices like in a jiffy with a kind of military precision.
How?
Because of that immense power. If Mr. President tomorrow says, we have assessed thoroughly the existing processes involved, we have seen the loopholes, we are blocking them, we want to make them absolutely transparent. I didn't mention that earlier. The bulwark, the major protective force behind sort of processes I would love to have Nigerians introduce depends solely on transparency and community policing. When I say community, I mean entire Nigerians. I would know when the fuel meant for the stations around my area get there.
But have you heard?
But you would only require a president who would be able to give that marching orders. That it can only happen in Nigeria. He will give that marching order, nothing will happen.
Have you heard that corruption fights back?
Yes.
You don't see this kind, assuming, of course, we all agree that there is some corruption in the downstream sector as well as operated, then you don't see that kind of corruption fighting back.
Ribadu said, when you fight corruption, corruption fights back. Absolutely. Absolutely. But you don't have to pander to corruption all the same. By continuing this existing system, what we are doing is we are just glossing over corruption. We are not even fighting it at all. People have fought corruption successfully in different parts of the world. Great leaders in other places, in South Korea, in Malaysia, and so on. Okay. You could really fight corruption. It is again the only person that can fight corruption successfully at that level is our very powerful Mr. President.
But you know that the laws have also, he has to do with mindful of the laws and the fact that it's a federal system where you can't force your opinion down to the other.
I agree absolutely. Let me give an example. You mentioned the local governments and the state government. And I've listened to people speak about the capacity of the average Nigerian to now monitor their governors and ask questions. But deep down in our hearts, can the people of, let's speak anybody in Lagos, can the people of Lagos, poor people of Lagos State, question Fashola over, let's say, LASU school fees? Can they question him?
Why not?
Aren't they doing that already?
Let's stay on this petrol matter. Sorry, because you mentioned something that has to do with the grassroots, and quite frankly, let's see, as an engineer, how can we, maybe in my neighborhood, because we're trying to salvage the situation and help the situation forge ahead, PPMC, NNPC, DPR, how can, for instance, in my neighborhood, how can we know that this X amount of petrol has been given to ABC petrol station in my locality, so that everyone will know that they have just taken delivery of this petrol product, and there will be no excuse to the people to say we don't have this?
Thanks a lot. That was the idea behind the community policing system that I mentioned. Community, quote and unquote. I'm referring to the nearby community and the entire country, Nigeria. This is how I believe this will work, because it has worked that way before. Let us speak port of entry, where we drop our cargo. Because you need subsidy money, you need to inform government that you are importing for the benefit of the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. What we need to do there is to introduce a new automated system that will ensure that there is a log of activity and trail of all activities involved as far as that transaction is concerned. From your procurement to our port in Lagos, the respected CBN governor told us that at a time over 15 ships were said to have, berthed in Lagos port in one single day. He was concerned that that is not likely to be true. But if we do not know how to, for instance, if someone says you're bringing in cargo, they must go to some places. They can't go to, they are not ghosts. They can't just disappear. So what I will expect us to do is that because of our peculiar situation, let us deploy information communication technology to pervasively monitor our oil imports, distribution, even up to the fuel stations. As I'm talking to you today, I know that over thousands of Nigerians that are involved in information technology will agree with me that we are able today, we have the capacity to develop application that will ensure that we can monitor the last drop of fuel, even at the fuel station. Okay. We can even go further and ensure that we now tie subsidy to people. But when you buy, we can give a token that will allow you on your phone, a driver that is taking people from, let's say, Ibadan to Abuja, it will stop at some places to top up fuel. Okay, you can top up fuel and log it on your phone. These are all possibilities that are doable with Nigerians. You do not need to import this technology. Nigerians will be willing to do it free of charge.
Could you link it up? Link it with, I mean, in the president's speech, but previously we had talked about framework. Even those in the industry say, listen, there has to be a framework to encourage investors to come in if it has to really pander to the forces of demand and supply. But now that he's talked about working on the PIB to ensure that it's passed, to give that framework, how does this add up?
Let me state first and foremost that I'm not familiar with the content of the PIB. But I'm familiar with the way we draft our laws. I can give examples that will make you laugh. That deep down inside us, we know that this law will not address anything. I can cite the example of the AMCON law. I can cite the example of the changes we made to our constitution, especially the Electoral Act, that show that we moved like 3 steps, 10 steps, and then in the very next clause, we reversed the gains of the movement.
Really?
Let me give you the example of the issue of participatory democracy. I'm sure it would have been Mr. President who drove the National Assembly, and they felt, okay, they want us to be able to elect people like Americans elected Obama, wherein somebody who was not within the system could come forward because he's good, he has potentials, the people will support him. And they introduced the direct primary election for
political parties.
Yes, for political parties. And then the next very, very clause is introduced that you can also do the indirect one if you prefer. And what did all the godfathers, quote and unquote, they all embraced the second option, because the second option, the second option allowed them to continue with the traditional delegate system, whereby one very good godfather who's nice to a whole lot of people will bring those people together. You are my people, go there. This is the person you should vote for. So the end result of that is that the democracy that will happen is no longer the democracy that really appealed to the ordinary people, but the wish of that person that is in control.
How about in terms of the judiciary, in terms of dispensing cases for a certain period of time?
Thank you very much. What I've also observed is that oftentimes our law gives them so much liberty. In fact, I could say, at the risk of, I've already said Mr. President is the most powerful in the world. People could say, why I'm making all this. I think our judiciary too will be like the most powerful in this world. Because when you read the regulation that the United Kingdom is deploying in contract administration, is patterned after the European Union. This regulation give you specific of this is what should be, this is, it's like a cast iron. The judges have little spaces to maneuver. But in Nigeria, the laws are so carved that even the judge is confused. He has to fall back on his discretion. So we have discretion. Then that is why in a lot of instances, you see certain cases going this way. Then you see certain similar cases going this way.
But across the world, judges do certain things with their discretion.
Yes, I agree absolutely. I'm only speaking relatively.
Okay.
I'm using our own.
But looking at the whole scenario in the country now, the speech, Labour's position, where do you see all this leading?
I didn't listen to the speech originally, but courtesy, we stayed out there. I finally got to listen to Mr. President. And it's like Labour is not going to give grant yet. I have said that. I stand with Nigerian people. I also believe strongly, because I've listened to Konjo Iweala speak, I've listened to Lamido Sanusi, I've listened to a whole lot of people speaking on behalf of Mr. President and the government. My position is that it appears to me that we continue to look at this issue as a two-way thing, that okay, let's just look at what the peripheral, solve that, and then business goes, it continues as usual. I see Mr. President as a victim of this whole setup. He met this mess on ground, so he's trying to wriggle out of it. So my suggestion, let us change the processes that made it possible for us to get into that mess. Ordinarily, perhaps we should be discussing 400 billion now. Maybe that should be our discussion. Because you recall that it has been said several, and nobody has yet disputed it, that under Obasanjo, this range, the maximum was 300 billion, and so on, and that it's retained, it was at that same level under Jonathan and Yaradua, and then suddenly it's ballooned up.
But what should the best way, I mean, if we want to remove what caused it in the first instance, isn't it just removing the subsidy?
That is a simplistic approach. That's a very, very simplistic approach. You have not solved the problem, like I told you.
Maybe not simplistic, what about simple?
When you remove the subsidy, people continue to buy fuel, right?
Yes, they will.
When they buy fuel, would they buy it at 65 or at the new price?
No, with other framework, if they are put in place, forces of demand and supply comes into play.
Yes, but you will cheat the Nigerian people.
Really?
Yes, because already you have a cartel in place. And 141 price was not even decided by government. According to them, it's supposed to be as a result of international price fluctuation. So what happens when Naira, I pray that Naira continues to remain very, very strong.
A very quick one here before you leave. Would you prefer an independent investigator to look at all of this probe?
I once discussed with a couple of my friends. I said, this is our country. This is our government. I have confidence. I like Dr. Goodluck Jonathan as a person. I like him. I'm a fan of his wife. I like him because she once did something that I'm very, very proud of. The day she was with them at Okrika, and she was telling the governor that you cannot just dismantle the waterfront, that you have to talk to the people, you have to engage the people. And then you will recall that some time ago, Mr. President took a decision on the Super Eagles. Then people bombarded him on his Facebook. I'm Mr. President's fan on his Facebook. And Mr. President reversed this decision. So I want you to look at the mindset of Mr. President, mindset of the First Lady, a mindset of engagement, the readiness to engage people. So what I preach is that let us first make sure that we know what really is our subsidy.
Okay, just as everybody has advocated.
Once we can change the process, it will take us just about 2 weeks.
Right.
We will change the process. Once we change the processes involved, and you allow us to deploy technology for a pervasive monitoring of how fuel now move, let it be possible for the Nigerian man at Otuoke to be able to go online and see that, okay, the last time they brought fuel to Texaco was this and that.
All right.
Once we solve this part, then we know the actual. Then it will be possible for us, because I would also want that place deregulated.